Hey guys, this is John. Recently I got a message requesting a tutorial, and since I'm pretty regularly updating my blog now, I thought I'd start up with the tutorials again. So I am fulfilling this request. Basically all it is, or what the request was to basically find a way to click on a swatch and change the color of an object, like this. It's a really basic script, and I'm going to show you two ways to accomplish it. One is the super basic way, and the other is a little bit more technical, but it'll help save on draw calls. And if you're using if you're doing stuff on mobile, the lower the draw calls, the better. So what we're going to do is start up a new project. Sure, why not? No. And then we'll wait for this to go. Alright. First thing we'll do, we'll just start with a cube and a camera. So we'll go to Game Object, Create Other, and create a cube. And then we'll drag it out in front of the camera, like so. And we'll also add in a directional light. That way it looks all nice and fancy. Sure. Okay, so we have our cube, we have our camera, and now we need our script. So we'll create a new C# script, and we'll call it ChangeColor. Open that up. Alright, so first thing we're going to want to do is create our variables. Now, for the color swatch, I'm going to bring in a texture for that, and we'll call it, or we'll go public texture 2D, and we'll call it color texture. And I'll spell it with a U because I'm Canadian. And then to grab, we want to change the color of the cube, right? So we're going to grab the render of it so we can access the material. So public render, and we'll call it colored cube. Okay. Now, I'll quickly bring in this texture that I'm using. Alright. And before we do anything, we'll create a new game object. What I did was hit Control-Shift-N, or you can just go to Game Object, Create Empty. And we'll just call this ChangeColor. And we'll drag the ChangeColor script onto that object. Now from here, we'll drag in our texture, and then we will drag the cube onto the renderer. So now we have our texture and our cube attached to this script. So we'll go back to the ChangeColor script. And I'm going to be doing this using Unity3D GUI. And the first thing I want to do is, or what I want to do is display the texture on the screen. That way you can click it and choose the color. So what I'm going to do is create a rect variable for where the texture is going to be displayed. So we'll just call it texture rect. And we'll just give it some values like 10, 10, 200, 200. So it'll be offset by 10 pixels in the X and Y direction, and it'll be 200 pixels high and wide. So we're going to go with our on GUI function to display our texture. And we'll go with GUI.drawTexture. The first parameter is a rect, so we just pass our texture rect variable. And the second is our texture, like so. So now, when you go and run your scene, it should display the texture in the top left corner, like that. Alright, so next we want to figure out basically which color we're clicking on when we click on this texture. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out where the mouse is relative to the UV coordinates of the texture. Now, if you don't know what UV coordinates are, it's basically a value of somewhere between 0 and 1. It's what all meshes use, basically to just figure out where on the texture is supposed to be displayed where, if that makes any sense. So what we're going to do now is figure out where the mouse is on that texture. So we want to figure out when the mouse is released before we do anything. So we'll check the event. So if event.current, and this is just the current event that's happening during the onGUI function, .type equals event type dot mouse up. So this is when the mouse is released during onGUI. We're going to make a vector2 called mouse position, and it's going to be equal to the event.current. So the current event is mouse position. Simple enough. Now, we want to make sure that if the mouse is outside of the texture, we just don't do anything. So we're going to make an if statement, and if the mouse position.x is less than a texture rect dot x, or the mouse position.x is greater than the texture rect dot x max, so the maximum x of the rectangle, or, and then we'll do the same for the y position. So mouse position.y is less than texture rect.y, or mouse position.y is greater than texture rect.y max. And if that's the case, we'll just return out of the function and not do anything. Alright, does that make any sense so far? Hopefully. If not, there's comments for you to scream at me. So from here, we're checking if the mouse is inside the rectangle, and if it is, we're going to get the UV position of the mouse relative to the texture. So to do that, we're going to go with create a float for the U position. So texture U position equals mouse position dot x minus texture rect dot x. So this is eliminating any offset that we have. So it'll be taking into account the mouse position as if the texture was being drawn in the very top left corner at 0.0. And we're just going to divide it by the width of the texture rect. Okay? We're going to do the same thing with the V position. So texture V position. And this is the vertical position. And we'll just do the exact same thing. So I'll just actually copy and paste this and change the values. So instead of x, we put y. Instead of width, we do height. And also keep in mind that the UVs start from the bottom left corner, but in onGUI, things are drawn from the top left corner. So in order to fix this, we're going to put everything in brackets and subtract it from 1. Okay? From here, we're going to create a color variable called ChangeColor. And we're going to use a function called getPixelByLinear. So color texture dot get pixel by linear, and it gets the color of the texture at the given UV position. And since we just calculated that, we'll just go texture U position, texture texture V position, and that should give us the color of the texture. Where we click. Now to apply that color to the object material, we will just go colored cube dot material dot color equals texture color. Now let's see if this worked. Now, as you can see here, we got an error. It says that our color's texture is not readable, so the texture memory cannot be accessed by scripts. So it's an easy fix. All we do is we choose our color's texture in the project window, and under texture type, we choose advanced, and we make sure that read-write enabled is turned on, and then hit apply. And now it should work. Yay! So this is fine and dandy and all. The one issue with it is that if you're trying to change the color of a whole bunch of different objects, since you are setting the materials color, the material color instead of the shared material color, it's going to create a brand new material, and it's going to increase the draw calls for every single object that you apply this to. If you want every object to be the same color, you can just set the shared material, and it'll still work. But if you had, say, 3 cubes, and you wanted them all to be a different color, if you wanted, let's say you had 3 or 4 cubes and you wanted them all to be a different color. To do that, you would need to just lost my train of thought. If you wanted all 3 cubes to be a different color, you wouldn't be able to use shared material. You would have to use material, and that would increase draw calls. So my next little trick will fix that for you. I'll just create a new cube because I can't access that material. Oh, move that back out. Yay, bloopers. Alright. Oh, no. Okay. I'll just quickly fix this. Since I'm using the shared material, switch this back. A little rusty, clearly. And then we'll just choose white. And then, look, it's good as new. Never happened. Never happened. Alright. So, the next thing, in order to save draw calls and still change the color of the mesh to whichever ones you want, whether you have 6 cubes, 100 cubes, we're going to do something with the Vertex Colours. Now you can't change the Vertex Colours and have them do anything with the default shader, so we need to create a brand new shader. And the script that we just created will be pretty close to the same, but we're going to add an additional function. So the first thing we're going to do is create our shader that supports Vertex Colours. So new shader, we'll just call it Vertex Colours. Who cares if there's two X's? And then we'll open that up. Eventually. There we go. Okay, so it gives you a default shader. We'll just get rid of that. Alrighty. So the first thing we're going to do is create something called category. Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but the documentation has a ton of stuff on the Shader Labs language. So we still want it to be a regular diffuse shader. So we're going to make sure that lighting is on. We want to make sure it writes to the Z buffer on, and we want backface culling on, so it's not drawing the backs of the triangles and adding geometry that doesn't need to be. I'm going to put in this blend function. And this is the important part that I actually wanted to make sure was in here. The only reason why I'm actually going over the shader is because of this. We're going to put something called bind channels into the shader. And what bind channels does is it tells the graphics card which channels of the vertex needs to be paid attention to. So that's going to be, the first one is going to be color, because we want to take the color into account. We're going to take the actual vertex itself into account, so vertex, and we're going to bind the text coordinates, which is just the texture coordinates. So this gives the graphics card the information it needs, gives you the vertex itself, to draw, the color to multiply into the texture, and the actual texture coordinates, so it takes the UV map into account. Now this is the actual shader, so we'll just go subshader, and we're going to create a pass, which is what this shader is going to do. We're going to use a keyword called color material. Oh, helps if I spell it right. And it's going to be ambient and diffuse. So this takes the ambient and diffuse. It's like an ambient and diffuse material. Then we're going to set the texture, and it's called main text up here, so that's what we'll put down here. And we're going to combine the texture and multiply with the primary. And then it's listed in custom Vertex Colours. And then we'll assign that to our cube. Alrighty. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Alright. So now we're going to go back to our ChangeColor script and set it up so that it changes the vertex colors of the mesh. So what I'm going to do is create a function called ChangeColor, and we'll pass in a color value. Alright. Now the first thing we're going to do in this function is create a color array. And what we're going to do is make it the exact same size as the color cubes meshes vertex count. So we need access to the mesh filter. So we're going to go color cube.get component mesh filter. We'll grab the mesh and it'll be the number of vertices. Okay. And we're going to create a for loop that goes through every single color and sets it to the new color. So int I equals 0, I is less than color array dot length I plus plus. So it increases every time it runs through this. Color array I is equal to new color. And now that we have the color array filled, we're going to grab the mesh and set its colors array to our color array. Alright, and that's basically it to set the colors. And what we're going to do is replace this function, or this line here, with change mesh color, and we're going to pass in our texture color variable. Alright, and if this works properly, it should still turn colors, but this is using Vertex Colours instead of the material color. So we could have 40,000 cubes on here, well maybe not that many, but let's say like 20 cubes on here, all set to different colors using Vertex Colours, and it's all going to be batched. And we'll get maybe like 1 or 2 draw calls out of it instead of the 20 or so that we would get normally. Alright. And that's it. That was, hopefully whoever requested this is happy with the outcome. And if you liked it, hit that like button. And if you liked it a lot, subscribe. So, yeah, I'm not going to drag this out anymore. Bye-bye!